In this episode of Ororua, Libby Gray explores the spirituality practices of Komako Silver, no Ngāti Pakahi, no Ngā Puhi, and her unique approach to her Taonga Pūoro practice. Heavily influenced by a spirituality-based upbringing, Komako explores her experiences with the spirituality practices of other cultures and how this has guided her Taonga Pūoro journey. Nō reira e te iwi, mea re taringa mai.
Ko te kimihanga, ka kimi au ki whea, ka kimi au ki runga, ka kimi au ki whea, ka kimi au ki raro. Ka kimi au ki whea, ka kimi au ki uta, ka kimi au ki whea, ka kimi au ki tai, ka kimi au ki whea e kimi ai ia io. Ko te pū, ko te kauru, kei te hia kei te koronga matāne. Tūramarama ānuku, tūramarama ārangi korangi e tūnei. Ko papai takoto nei, ko tātou, ngā tauira o tēnei wānanga hopu reo, hopu kōrero i te ao hapū, i te ao Taonga Pūoro, i te ao hine raukatauri, hine pūtehue. Whakamau atu ia i o i te wānanga. Ue anuku, ue arangi ka puta ki te whai au, ki te ao marama, whano tū mai te toki o haumi e, ui e, tai ki e. Tēnā rawāti koe, kei te māreikura, kei te teina, kei te tei hoa pū mau, e mihi ana ki a koe mau i wātea mai, i a koe tēnei oranga, oranga tēno puku ki te mahi. E mihi ana ki a koe i taipe nei mai kia whakaniko i ngā taringa, kia whakaātāhua, kia whakaki i o tātou hirikapo puku ki o kōrero tuku iho, o tira ki o kōrero whakahirahira o nānei i te ao Taonga Pūoro. Tēnā koe Komako. Tuatahi, ko ai koe, no hea koe.
Kia ora, kia rea te tuakana. Mehi atu kia koe mo tō karanga mai ki te tautoko i nei kōrero tahi, wānanga tahi, ko waiau, ko imi te maunga, ko ngā tuki mata whāroa te waka, ko mutu te awa, ko te huia rawa ko mangaiti oku marae, ko Dorian Dinata toku whaia, ko Nuki Aldridge toku kaumātua, ko Ngarano Renata toku māma, ko Lisa Silver toku papa, ko Whitu Silver toku tuakana, ko Muka rawa ko te puao oku tuakana, toku tungange, ko Komako Aroha toku ingoa, ki te tau toku maraikura, ki te tau toku whatukura, toku papa, ko Australia, Ireland, England. Yeah, my dad's grew up in Australia, his dad's from England, and then their ancestors are from Ireland. Yeah.
Whew, I did the actuals. I've known you for how long now, Komako?
True.
And I actually didn't know all of that. So, yeah, atu i o whānau, i tō whānau. But, yeah, mihi ana. And thank you again for finding the time in your busy schedule to be with us today and to be with Haumanu and Ororua to share all of the things that you're doing and all of the things that you're passionate about are all of the things that I'm passionate about. And today we're talking about our Taonga Pūoro. How did you get into Taonga Pūoro? Where did it start for you?
I guess it started, my first encounters with Pūoro weren't so much with the instruments, but with our atua hine putehue. And growing up, mum and dad had a beautiful marakai. Yeah, they had amazing gardens where they had people come over from the community, and they their mahi was really about learning the ways of gardening and all that pertains to that mahi, which is massive. But then, yeah, growing up, we had, our pāhara kike, we had a beautiful ngāhere. We grew up looking over Waikato Awa, And we had this hothouse, I guess, or like this greenhouse, this real massive greenhouse that was full of these beautiful, massive beings that were, you know, hui, gourds. And that was, I guess, my first initiation into Pūoro, but it was through the mara. And I didn't know anything about that at the time. It was just like something that my parents did. Dad is a sitarist, and they had two kind of purposes in which they grew hui. One was the kaupapa of whenua ki te whenua, which Mum was very passionate about. That was her intention. And then Dad, in terms of oro, is a super passionate sitarist, and through that passion wanted to extend that into figuring out how to make sitars, and realised, you know, by having sitars, that the main aspect of it was made out of a hui. And so that was trippy for my mum and dad to kind of connect on that level. Like, you know, obviously hui being such an integral part of our tupuna, and ways of being, the many different stories around hene putu hui and the uses of that. But yeah, it was really because Dad just wanted to figure out how to make a sitar. Wow. And yeah, they were really passionate about revitalising the stories of hene putu hui, the planting of her, and I guess just actually planting her in the mara and having her there. Yeah. And then they would go out and share a lot of the kākano with the whānau. But at that time, I guess I was like 6, I would have been about 5 or 6, was when Mum started bringing me, you know, I guess I was like the wānanga baby, and because I'm the youngest, and so my brothers got to like hang out with their friends and do what they wanted to do. And, you know, my tuakana whetū, she was a bit older, so she was off doing her thing. So Mum would always take me, and I spent many nights sitting at her feet with whae hine wirangi, and they would just chord it all, and you know, with whae and her beautiful hui and her beautiful taonga. And so it started at a really young age in terms of exposure. But again, like I didn't really know what they were or that it was a unique thing. I just thought, oh yeah, one of the nanny's houses, one of the auntie's places.
Oh, it's normal, right? It was normal in your upbringing.
It just seemed really normal. But I would say like the first oro that I was really curious about was actually the sitar. That was like my first like love, not being a Taonga Pūoro as such, but oro, like Dad would play at like 6 o'clock in the morning, every night. And so we just consistently had this frequency through the whare. And then, you know, Mum's playing all of her kind of Māori waiata through the whare as well. So that was kind of the exposure that I had.
That's so cool. And for our listeners who might not quite know what a sitar is, can you share a whakamārama?
So a sitar is like, the easiest way to explain it is like it's the Indian version of a guitar, and it originates from the Middle East. Its original form was in a subaha, and then over a long period of time it became a sitar. So yes, this real beautiful big string instrument that's highly regarded in India and the Middle East, and there's a goddess called Saraswati, and she's the goddess of sound and music. And if you see her holding a sitar. Oh, so cool. The sitar is like really revered over there. That's like one of their main pūoro, I guess, for them.
I wonder if she knew Hinerau Katauri.
Probably.
Knows, hey, into having a jam.
Yeah, there we go.
It'll be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like your kōrero on the orokohanga of Te Ao Pūoro ki roto i a Komako, because it's not through instruments rather than straight to the source. You were straight from the atua of hine pūtehu e mihi ana ki ene kōrero. Thank you. Our next question is, like, I know that you do so many amazing things with Te Ao Pūoro and Te Ao Māori in general, but if you could specialise, if you could put a finger on one part of Taonga Pūoro, what is it that you specialise in?
Yeah, that's a beautiful pātai. I guess my main passion in regards to Pūoro is the aspect of, the rongoa aspect of our Pūoro. So I've just got this real big fascination with learning and understanding and investigating the art of Taonga Pūoro in relationship to the healing properties of Taonga Pūoro.
Sure.
So that's what I would say. I wouldn't say like I'm a specialist in that. I would say I'm very much a student of that and very much learning that. And that will probably, be my whole entire life. But that's definitely where the fascination is for me.
Yeah, and what grows from fascination is passion.
Yeah.
And I feel like your upbringing has been in and around rongoa.
Yes,
and so how natural that ara for you to go.
Yeah.
And I think about all of the things that you've been exposed to, rongoa, Taonga Pūoro hei rongoa is really up there for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you, you talked about learning wānanga and some of the kōrero in and around Pūoro. Is there any particular pūrākau or tikanga? We've heard about hine pūtehue and atua, but is there anything along those lines that you are particularly drawn to? Pūrākau, tikanga, atua?
Probably, I would say like pūrākau is something I'm very much learning. Mum probably exposed us more to like the tikanga as well as the atuatanga. I would say that was probably at the foreground of our upbringing, and the pūrākau wrapped around the different atua stories, but it was more to do with like the everyday element of atuatanga. So it felt very natural. It wasn't really like sit down and share a story. It was very much like here's the tikanga around the whare, or the tikanga around the different spaces or the different wānanga that we would go into. So I learned that from a very young age. Yeah, just the different energies that Mum would kind of guide me into, that as I got older I realised that was very much a practice of like atuatanga and what that means in terms of it not being separate to oneself. And that was real evident quite early on. Yeah.
I smile ear to ear because we are consistently in a time of the reclamation of mātauranga Māori, and hence why we are recording these podcasts today. Reclamation of mātauranga Māori in the hope that it's normalised in the whare and in the whānau. And you are a product of that. It's beautiful to hear you living and breathing ao Māori because of the amazing mahi that your mum and your papa, the things that they did to embed tikanga, ao Māori, reo Māori, all of the things, so that it just falls out of your mouth.
Yeah, it's trippy because like I grew up in a spiritual school, and that was an esoteric school, but we also had a school alongside that, which was the Māori Spiritual Warrior School. And so like growing up and practicing, nohopuku and meditation and chanting different prayers, like I thought that was everyone. I thought everyone did that. But as you get older, you start to learn that it's unique and it's rare, and exactly what you're sharing. We're in this time of reclamation and revitalization, so that it doesn't become something that's foreign and outside of the home. It was like very much in the home, and being born, like I was born at home. It was my mum, and of course my mum was there, but my mum was there, and then dad and my nana, and I think my siblings were around. And so it started from there, really, because the practices of like, the cutting of the cord and my nana taking my whenua and planting of my whenua, and mum being staunch as on rongoa Māori. Like, I've been to the doctors once, I've been to the doctors once. Like every time I've been Māori, it's always rongoa Māori first and foremost, like give that a go. And if that doesn't work, well, you kind of have to suffer through it, because then it becomes a kōrero in terms of Māori, like what's really happening if, if that's not going to help, or it assists in the healing, of course it does. So that was instilled in me in a very young age, and I feel like I'm a practice of oro and rongoa, and not having to go to the doctors and not having to rely on Western medical systems and those kinds of institutions wasn't kind of like told to me and like this is negative, but wasn't guided towards that because there was just so much whakamana within our own rongoa and within our own practices. And it totally worked for me.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm loving this kōrero. I'm loving that I've known you and your whānau for upwards of 15, 16 years.
Yeah.
And this kōrero is not new to my ears, but it's new to this realm going, yes, there is hope for our people to carry on being their unapologetic selves as a result of the upbringing and the struggles and the push through that our whānau, that our mums and our dads and our tūpuna invested so much in. I want for you to talk a little bit about your kaupapa that's at the forefront, oro Māori, and how's that? What is it? How did you get it?
Yeah. I guess, it's interesting because talking about like being a product of being brought up in that environment with all of those taonga and, the kite was full. And that was very much because of the fight, I guess, the resistance that my parents moved into and were really resilient in their ways of being, thinking about the future and thinking about their own tamariki and thinking about their mokopuna. And so as I got older and I started to realise, like, having kōrero with friends who were māwiwi, and their first choice was to go to Western medicine or go to the doctors, and having many, many different conversations like that with pretty much all of my friends, and whānau as well. I think that was big for me. A lot of my cousins didn't really have much faith in our own ways of healing oneself. That affected me for ages, like for years, and I tried to think, like, what can I do? And for a long time I practiced telling stories through filmmaking, and I made documentaries, and I travelled around to different whenua, met different Indigenous cultures, and the more that I spent time with Indigenous cultures, what I really witnessed was their instruments and how that was really present in their cultural practices. And then I started to think, wait on, like, I know kapaka and I know that there's the guitar and I know that there are some kind of wind instruments because I had seen it around me, but I had never really taken much notice of it. And so it was actually when I was in the Himalayas, in the mountains with the Tibetan people, and I was spending some good time with the Tibetan monks, and we would wake up every morning at 5 a.m. and do prayers, and I heard the sound of the pukaya and the pumoana, and I was like, whoa, I was like, yo, like, I know that sound, you know, I know that sound. And that's where it really started to bridge the two worlds of what I was used to in terms of spiritual practices and then the sound frequency that the Tibetan people, I guess, like really exposed me to and really brought to the forefront. And so when I came back to Aotearoa, through those different journeys, I, very slowly started to witness and become present with actually, like, what are our pūoro, what are our instruments, and I need to know more and understand more. And that was through the time, of when you and Whetu and Horomona with Whaia Rangieria at Waikato University. And I would say that was like the first time that I was like really exposed to Taonga Pūoro and the sounds of Pūoro, and that was when I was like 15. So now I'm 30. And so, like I said, it's been like this real slow journey because that's what felt like needed to happen. I felt like Pūoro wasn't necessarily a practice where you could kind of just like go into it and take from it and then play these beautiful instruments. Well, one, they're difficult to play, like some of them can be difficult to play. So the desire was always there, but I knew that it had to be a slow journey. And I guess how it led me to this kaupapa called Atua Māori really came from feeling like a product of sound healing and of someone who, you know, like, yeah, I definitely get mawiri. I definitely have, I've had massive mental health struggles, like everyone, right? Like everyone has struggles in life. That's natural. But because of the taonga that were available to me and the kite and the whānau around me, you know, like yourself and like other brothers and sisters around me, I was able to, I guess, gather different mātauranga and different akonga along the way. And that's really where Oro Māori came from.
Wow.
Was really from that desire of creating more opportunities and pathways and accessibility for our whānau, first and foremost, 100%. But yeah, it really is this fascination of healing the body and healing the mind and healing the heart and our energy centers. That's really what I'm passionate about, because that's what I was brought up around.
Yeah.
So, and I know that it works. But, you know, I've had my experiences in terms of healing in that way, and that's awesome, but it's not enough, you know, and over the years, like having kōrero with people, like I would passionately talk about this, but then there was nothing that I was really doing around it. So to kind of create, I guess, a kaupapa or an organisation where I could bring people in and have more of, you know, kōrero and wānanga, I was like, why not? You know, we don't have enough of this, and I've got all this passion, so why not do something? Because I'm very lucky to have people around me in which are keen to share in kōrero, you know, their mātauranga. And I think just by having that accessibility for myself, I really wanted to create something that created that for our whānau.
Yeah, cool. Then, so what are you going to do with all the kōrero? The mātauranga, the taonga iho.
Yeah. So I guess we're starting with honouring our practitioners. That's really important to me. I really want to honour the kōrero of our whaia and really elevate that for good reason, you know. Like we have a lot of understanding of atua tāne and that's beautiful. And having brought up with actually not knowing much about atua tāne but more about atua wahine, I started to also realise how rare that was. So bringing our whaia and the kōrero of our maraekura to the forefront, honouring our practitioners who have been doing this mahi, you know, kind of lone wolves out there, and now coming together. There's different beautiful rōpū like Haumanu Collective, rōpū and Pōneke and Te Waipounamu. And what we're focusing on right now is creating resources so they're accessible for people to become practitioners, become storytellers, become educators. And I just see this beautiful weaving of, you know, with our rongoa practitioners, with our kai mirimiri practitioners, with any kind of people who are interested in helping our people. Pūoro should just be right next to it and in relationship with it. So I guess that's really the pathway for Oro Māori, is just continuing to support bridging those gaps.
Yeah, and the retelling of our stories from a wahine point of view. Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful that you are able to bring your passions to reality. And so how long is your kaupapa?
Well, this first phase, by the time we release something, it would have been 12 months. So we'll go full cycle. But I mean, I don't see us stopping. Yeah. I think it would be decades. Yeah. I hope that like Tuia and Manaia, like my iramutu, like I hope that it's a foundation and a kaupapa that they just seamlessly move into. Yes. Yeah. Or not, you know, if they're not interested, that's all good. But any of our mokopuna, like I really want to create something that they can just come into and they don't have to create anything. It's already there. It's already thriving. Yeah.
Like our kōka across in the Tairāwhiti says, be a good kaumātua. Be a good tupuna. Yes. What are we going to do for our uri whakatupu, our mokopuna? And what an amazing resource that you're creating right here and right now for our generations to come. Yeah. Oh, exciting. Tino exciting. What are your aspirations for our people, for Taonga Pūoro, and how can this be strengthened by our people, by our hapori? You kind of answered it, but are there anything outside of this mahi?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm such an idealist, so like my aspirations are like so massive. Like, you know, I'd love it if every whānau had a pūoro kite.
Yeah.
Like, that would be awesome, you know? Yes. Like, it sounds simple, but it's not, right? Like, but I want it to be. That's one of them. I would love it if, like, there's so many of my Māori mates who are kōrero too, and they have no idea that we have pūoro. They know they maybe heard a conch or something like that. So that drives me crazy. Like, that's like, I'm like, how do you not? But of course I know why. We know why. So I would love, you know, within the next 10 years, like, to every other Māori or every other being who's in this space, you have a kōrero, and it's not this foreign thing. It's not this thing that's far away. It's not this thing that's not accessible. It's in the conversation. It's in the kōrero of our culture, just as much as kapahaka.
Yeah,
like that's a really big passion of mine. We know about you know, kapahaka, and heaps of people do, like, around the world.
Haka.
They know about haka.
Yeah.
That's very exposed and that's very accessible to watch on TV or to know someone who's in kapahaka, but it's really rare to come across someone who plays Taonga Pūoro or who has pūoro. So that's definitely an aspiration. I guess another aspiration in terms of Oro Māori through our research. So some of the research that we're doing is at the moment we've just, I wouldn't say discovered, because our tupuna and our people already know, you know, the healing properties of pūoro and the power of sound frequency. It's so clearly throughout our whole entire culture and weaves its way through at the forefront and in the background of, you know, Tihei Moriora being the first breath of life that we take when we come out of the womb. And so what we're researching at the moment is the different hertz in which the different pūoro sit within. And because of a lot of research that's already been done from other brothers and sisters that I've been studying overseas and here as well, but it's not really at the forefront yet in terms of the practices of Taonga Pūoro. What I'm really interested in is not only the hertz of our pūoro, but that in relationship to how they work with the different energy centres. So another phase of our kaupapa is doing brainwave mapping.
Yeah.
And I really want to work with all different generations of our people, all different types of mawewitanga, whether it's, you know, terminal illness, right up until like just having a little bit of a flu or a headache. Mental health obviously is massive for our people for many different reasons. So from my opinion and from my experience and my upbringing, sound is not only it's a powerful way in which it works with the body and the mind and the soul and the spirit, but it transcends understanding. You don't need to have your reo. You don't need to have someone touch your tinana if you have trauma in your body from experiences in life. So that's really where I want to take Oro Māori, is in that pathway of sound frequency healing, because I just love the fact that it does transcend culture and it transcends time. It transcends so much of our mental understanding of what we're capable of doing in terms of healing ourselves, but with the assistance of our different pūoro. That for me is like the key, because we know that our tupuna, they were masters and they knew exactly what they were doing, and they were able to do things today that we would be like, whoa, like that's unbelievable. But I don't think it's unbelievable. I think it's very real. So I just really want to contribute to that pathway.
And it's about the remembering. Yeah, we are descendants of Atua, and we have this intimate connection with te wāhi ngaro, te wairua, te kauwairunga, which is where this taonga tukueho comes from, right? And so by mapping out all of the reo, all of the oro, we are able to pinpoint this one can be useful, this rongoa, this one. We already know this, we don't need validation, but how cool would it be to have specifics this instrument played this way using this reo with this intention opens this chakra, spins this energy.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh man, can I be in your team? Hey, no.
Yeah, it's like a funny fascination because it feels like kind of not so like, it feels a little bit like I don't really often sit with Māori and talk in this way, you know, like we talk about our pūrako or like energies and things like that. But like I am really passionate around neuroscience and how the mind and the synapses of the brain and how they communicate to the body. Because for me, that language is, it is reo Pākehā, but it's just in the reo of Pākehā, it's very Māori, you know, and throughout all of our karakia, it's the same. Like,
yeah, I get you.
Yeah,
100%.
it's the same whakapapa. It's really ours. It's our knowledge.
Yeah, just said in a different way, right?
Yeah. And I think it's interesting to kōrero about our pools of mātauranga, our puna of mātauranga, and different reo so that it becomes accessible to other rangatahi and other people, our people who might not have the reo and might not be interested in kapaka, and they might be really geeking out on this kind of thing. And so it's just really creating a space for people who might really want to go in that pathway. And maybe, maybe they're not the makers of the pūoro, maybe they might not even be the players of the pūoro, but there's
the growers of the pūoro.
Potentially,
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Something jumped into my head when you talked about the brainwave mapping. Rehua, my son, he's had 3 open heart surgeries, and every single surgery, pre and post, we've used Taonga Pūoro hei rongoa. One little kōrero I want to share with you is that in his 3rd open heart surgery, he was still intubated, so he still had the breathing machines on, and he had the little sticker across his head to measure his brain waves. Whoa. I was playing the kuko across his forehead, just to keep him noa, keep him tau, and to bring him back to this present. And when I played the kuko, I turned around and I looked on the brainwave machine, and it was the line was moving to the reo of the kuko. And like I said before, we don't need validation an answer or anyone outside saying this works because we already know, because our tupuna and our atua tell us and have shown us this. But it was just really cool to see on that machine. I was like,
that's so cool.
And I wondered that maybe you talk about you're working with the different mawiri, etc. That this might be somewhere in the hohipera that you
definitely.
Work with our whānau.
Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah.
I would love to.
Yeah,
that would be awesome, because for me it's not about them coming to us, it's about us going to them.
Yes.
And if they are in hospital or at home, wherever really, and that's the cool thing about sound recording and putting together different pūoro and different oro sounds with different intentions, because then don't even have to be there, because technology, we've got technology, and that totally play. Just press play, like go to bed, whatever, press play, do what you need to do, whatever like,
works for you.
Whatever works for you. It's different for everyone, eh?
Just before our kōrero, you talked about, and I want you to elaborate on our takatapui, our irawhiti, our whānau in this hapori, and Taonga Pūoro. Is there an aspiration for our whānau that you wanted to share?
Yeah, so I guess if people don't know, like takatapuitanga or ira tangata, I guess are the terminologies that we use around the shape-shifting energy or the fluidity of gender and sexuality. And growing up, like, that was never a thing. Like, my parents weren't like, you're a girl, or, you don't do boy things. It was never like that. Like, definitely we're like, oh, you're such a tomboy, that kind of thing. And that was encouraged. That was cool. And with sexuality, it was the same thing. It was never an issue. And so getting older and hearing different stories from different friends, mainly hearing their struggles within that space. And especially with my own, like with our own whānau, that's where it really like started to affect me. And I was like, wow, like this is, I didn't know this was an issue, you know. Again, it was like, I guess it was naivety or just like an innocence, because there was so much protection that my whānau put around me. And I understand now why, because they were like, you're out the gate. Like, you're out the gate. So like,
we're out the gate. Yeah, so we're going to keep it in the gate.
Yeah, we've got to keep it in the gate, keep it in the pa. I don't know how you're going to be received out there and through wānanga with our pūoro and starting to learn the different pūrākau, you know, and the different atua who are our guardians of Taonga Pūoro, and really feeling into their energies and their qualities. I could really feel that neutrality, that real neutral space, and that's where I felt safety. I was like, cool, I can be all of me in this space, because when you do practices like kapaka, there's very clear roles, you know, wahine tāne roles, and I actually love that. I think that's beautiful. But I can also see, you know, more kind of elements that could be, you know, expanded on within that space that invite for our whānau, our takatapuhi, our iritangata whānau, to have space to be who they are and to offer their rongoa and their kōrero in a way that's real safe, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like Pūoro is really that space. I feel that Taonga Pūoro can offer that for our whānau. And it's just real mean to go to different kaupapa and to see, like, you know, on Insta and different social media platforms, our takatapuhi whānau playing our Pūoro and hanging out together and connecting through culture.
Yeah.
As opposed to struggle. And that's what I really am starting to love. Yeah, that it's not like a trauma bonding, it's a rongoa bonding. And that's real empowering, eh?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Accessibility. It's all about access, eh? And it's all about sharing the aroha.
Yeah.
It's the whakarapopoto of our beautiful kōrero that we've had today.
Yeah.
But yeah, sharing the love. Because ka mate... Because when we understand, when we are sharing our mātauranga, we are ka ki rawa te kete, yeah? And when we start overflowing our kete, we're just sharing more love.
Yeah.
Like, hey.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know how else to say that. Any tips, any kōrero, whakakapi that you might have for someone who is looking at getting into te ao pūoro, ao Taonga Pūoro?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like this big like tapu wānanga haerenga. It can be like, you know, I like to have a few drinks, like you got the beer bottle there and you can,
all the time.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah, and so like there's so many different ways. Like I love going for a hikoi, you know, ki te taho o te moana or tangaro or hine moana or in the ngahere, and like everything is oro. Everything has a pūoro, and so that's one kind of way, I guess, if you want to explore like a personal journey for playing and just kind of listening and tuning in, and through that journey, I feel like it really does start to open up deeper listening with being like, whoa, I just, like, you know, when you're playing something, especially in the ngahere, and then, or even by the moana, and like there's a response, and that's when it starts to get super exciting.
Yes.
Yeah, and you're like, no, like, did you, like I was in
Did I just communicate with hine moana just now? Yeah? Yes.
Yeah, and you can feel it and you can hear it the more you kind of just explore and experiment. Like yesterday, I was in Te Arapātaka in Te Waiponamu, just up the hills of Akaroa, and I was playing my putorino, and I was playing through the whatukura voice, and this kerere was just like, and I was like, whoa, and so I like did it again, and then there was just like, and I was like, whoa, and I could feel it. I was like, oh, that's like definitely a response, you know, to the sound. And that was really fun. So yeah, I guess just exploring, experimenting. But I feel like with the practices and the art of Taonga Pūoro, like the cool thing about it is you can make pūoro if you're interested in rāranga. Like there's so many aspects of rāranga that are needed, like weavers are so needed for making pūoro, carvers are needed, harvesting of, you know, feathers and bones and shells and kohatu and wood, like, you know, you just start harvesting, and that is pūoro, you know, that is your taonga. Like my kite pūoro is not like anything grand, you know, and they're not fully carved up, incredible taonga, but to me they are, you know, to me they're very special because I can look at something very simple that I've spent time with and I can say, oh, I got that, you know, I found that feather when I was like going on a hikoi, and then I think about the hikoi I was on and I go, wow, that was actually a really special wānanga, and then now it's attached to this pūoro. That's the really cool thing about it, is like you can make it your own, you can make it unique, and it can just be for yourself and your whānau and your community, because it definitely has such an amazing way of kind of reverberating out once you kind of go into it. And it really is just making that first step. It really is just being like putting it into social media or putting it into Google or whatever, listening to some hidden tracks, listening to some amazing, you know, all of the amazing pūoro practitioners that we have available to us today, and just feeling into it and then kind of finding your own pathway within that. And some people might just be interested in making, playing, telling of the stories. Like, you don't have to do everything.
Yeah.
You can really focus on something very specific, and that's very powerful. But I think pūoro is really about making it your own unique practice first and foremost, and really sitting with that for yourself and what that means for yourself, whether it's because you want to connect with your culture, because you really want to explore maybe, you know, trying out Aotearoa Māori, and maybe the Western medical system hasn't worked for you. Or maybe it's about bridging those two worlds, you know, because you have a passion and a belief within both worlds, and you can bridge those worlds together. So, yeah, that's the only kind of thing I would say, really, like as a starting point.
Yeah, that's cool. One of our whānau, Milne from the far north, they talk about, you know, in our reclamation revitalisation mahi, without being a Māori, we always tend to shoot for the stars and let this take on it, you know, tapu. And so your kōrero supports my whakaro of, hang on, what's right here, right now? Oh, I really like Taonga Pūoro. Okay, let's go out into the taiao.
Yeah.
Let's listen to the birds, let's listen to the different winds and the different out of the moana. Oh, I like hearing it, so I want to learn how to play, or just listen. Like, it's simple, and your kōrero, your answer, your whakautu, i te pō nei, te ata nei, te rangi nei, is just get out there. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's ours. It's ours. Like, it, you know, it is our birthright to explore these practices of Taonga Pūoro. It's not, it doesn't have to be like you have to know the right person or that you have to be in the right wānanga. It really is, it is quite a personal thing, I feel.
Kia ora.
Yeah.
Kia ora.
Yeah.
I see you have a beautiful pūoro here. Would you like to have a jam? E mihi ana ki a koe.
Kia ora.
Sis mou anō. Ka tō wai ngā kupu, ngā kōrero, o te timatanga o tēnei hopu ngā kōrero, i tēnei podcast. Nō mātou anō te maringa nui. Kua tae mai koe o tira tō rahi ki Wanganui a mātou. O tira i a tātou te ao pūoro, te ao Taonga Pūoro. E kore mimiti te puna mihi kia koe, sis, e Komako. I tēnei, i enei kōrero tuku iho. O kia ora.
Kia ora, sis.
What is your pūoro?
This is a punga ihu. Got gifted this one, and it's wrapped in beautiful muka, and it's got some kind of and some power shell on the top.